The Manhattan Project. With the recent ending of the Second World War, there has been information released about the newly developed atomic bomb. This great bomb was used to put an end to the war in the Pacific and has been in development since 1940, unbeknownst to you, the American people. The most distinguished American and foreign scientists came together to make the secret Manhattan Project a success. The development of this powerful weapon was key to bring a swift end to the war without expending hundreds of thousands of American soldiers' lives.
The Manhattan Project was codename of the American efforts to develop the first functional atomic bomb during the Second World War. The project was created in response to fears that Adolf Hitler had already created an atomic bomb and was preparing to use it in the U.S. The many organizations leading up to the Manhattan Project were created by FDR after the whispers of Hitler creating a bomb himself. In the project's early stages, about a dozen black scientists and technicians were welcomed by the refugee researchers working in New York and Chicago. But soon the project needed room for a larger nuclear reactor and plants that could produce a supply of uranium-235 isotope. A secret city was built in the rural farmlands of Anderson County, and teams of scientists were transferred there. While white Americans and European refugee scientists could work freely on the site, black researchers could not. The Solid South bloc of Democrats in Congress insisted that the new city reflect the Jim Crow segregation laws that persisted in the 1940s. So the history of the Manhattan Project in Oak Ridge was written with the black scientific contributions left behind. As research continued, Roosevelt created the Advisory Committee of Uranium, a team of scientists and military officials tasked with researching uranium's potential role as a weapon. The Advisory Committee on Uranium's name was changed in 1940 to the National Defense Research Committee before finally being renamed Office of Scientific Research and Development, or OSRD, in 1941, adding Fermi to its list of members. The Army Corps of Engineers joined the OSRD in 1942, and with President Roosevelt's approval, the project officially turned into a military operation and project, with scientists serving in a supporting role. U.S. Army Colonel Leslie R. Groves was appointed the head of the project. The OSRD formed the Manhattan Engineer District in 1942, which is where the name originated from. Fermi and Szilard were still engaged in research on nuclear chain reactions, the project by which atoms separate and interact and were able to create uranium-235. Glenn Seaborg, an American chemist, was producing microscopic samples of pure plutonium, and the Canadian government was working on nuclear research at a few sites in Canada as well. This opened up many opportunities for America's allies to prove themselves to the American government. On December 28, 1942, FDR authorized the creation of the Manhattan Project to combine these various research efforts with the intent to create the first atomic bomb. Testing locations were set up in New York, Tennessee, one in Washington, as well as some in Canada. You may think the end of the Second World War in 1945 was the end of the Manhattan Project, but that may not be the case. Since the war's end, there are rumors that the United States will be creating something called the Atomic Energy Commission to watch over research efforts designed to apply the technologies developed under the Manhattan Project to other fields.
Testing of the bomb.
Its first nuclear detonation was the Trinity test, conducted on July 16, 1945, in the Jornada del Muerto area of the central New Mexico desert at the Alamogordo bombing range. This site was chosen for its isolation, flat ground, and lack of windy conditions. Other sites were considered elsewhere, like Texas and California. On that day, the Trinity's plutonium core implosion device was detonated from a 100-foot tower. Trinity's yield was approximately 21 kilotons. 1 kiloton was equal to the explosive force of 1,000 metric tons of TNT. The aftermath was a fireball, 2,000 feet in diameter that lit up the sky for many miles and created an enormous mushroom cloud. The insanely high temperatures turned the surface sand of the crater into a green glassy layer of dead trinitite. However, prior to the test, scientists were well aware that the blast would create potential radiation hazards. Even during basic laboratory and factory work, it created significant radiation safety issues. Though isolated, some unfortunate ranch families that were missed by the Army survey, which was used to evacuate anyone in the possible areas of exposure or exposed to the harmful radiation. Luckily, no deaths or human injuries were recorded, but livestock suffered from skin burns, bleeding, and loss of hair. Crops were also affected by the radiation, which led to various cancers, birth defects, and stillbirths, which some families reported plagued their homes. This area, which was almost 30 miles wide, extending almost 90 miles northeast of the site. Stafford Warren, the Manhattan District's chief medical officer, reported that for any future site, he proposed finding a larger site, preferably with a radius around 150 miles without population around it. Yet scientists still did not take this into account when dropping bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, especially in which were areas of many people that would soon fall to radiation poisoning.
Truman's role. Knowledge has recently been released to the public that during Harry S. Truman's presidency in wartime, he was completely aware and involved with the development of the atomic bomb. The information was passed on to President Truman when he was sworn in on April 12th of 1945, and 12 days later, Truman authorized the continuation of the project. Truman decided which of the Allies to share the information of the bomb with, and was aware of the testing and completion of the project. As the war raged on in the Pacific, it became more and more apparent that casualties of both Ally and Japanese troops would be catastrophic if the Allies invaded the Japanese mainland. Truman was faced with a monumental decision and the ultimate sacrifice. Would he invade and end war slowly, or would he stay back and bring the recently completed bomb Little Boy into play? Truman is an incredibly logical thinker and decided to save lives by using the bomb to hopefully end the war much quicker. A patriotic team was assembled and had a difficult job, as they not only had to hit their target successfully, but also were forced to face the immense psychological barrier of using such a weapon. The war's end. The bombs were dropped on Truman's command and resulted in the end of the war. The Americans and many others were saved from a long, grueling warfare, and Japan is being rebuilt with powerful democracy as we speak.